The Lord explains moral values. In the so-called better and educated world, where the Christian religion in particular is commonplace in various sectarian forms, morality is usually preached only in a way that is most politically expedient for the rulers, both in worldly and spiritual matters. The people are taught a grey understanding of God, not to help them recognize and love Him, but only to make them fear Him immeasurably as the most implacable tyrant of all tyrants. And thus, the divinity is preached only as a hostage that is supposed to bear fruit, when all other hostages have already become barren. Instead of the divinity being made known to the people as the most elevated consolation, it is given to them as something that has nothing else to do but irrevocably condemn billions of morally corrupt and disobedient children to the eternal lake of fire every minute. And so, look around a bit. Notice the innumerable dungeons filled with all kinds of moral criminals, and how, from one minute to another, these dungeons receive a constant flow of new inmates. So much so that, if these dungeons were to be united at some point, you would have to believe that, in a few years, the entirety of the Earth's population will have to get comfortable inside them. You may ask, what will happen to the people who enter these dungeons? Gaze a little towards the east. Behold, already there stand a number of deathly pale crowds, surrounded by all kinds of armed individuals and poisonous judges. And if you look further, there you see a number of murder weapons with which these unfortunate ones are executed. Burning pyres, gallows, scaffolds, and many other instruments of death. Behold, this is the final reformatory for such moral criminals. Now you will ask what all these people have done. Yes, I say, among them are murderers, robbers, thieves, defectors, and agitators of the state. Beyond that are a multitude of people who have caused great harm to the state by way of various frauds. Among them are those who have severely violated one or another political or even moral order. Behold, thus are the crimes of these unfortunate individuals revealed, insofar as they may serve as an apparent reason at least. Now we want to raise another question. What is the reason that these people have become such criminals? And even if you were to ask anyone else about this, the only answer you would surely get is this. The reason lies either in a neglected upbringing, or, which comes down to the same, their parents, grandparents, and earlier ancestors were already molded that way. But I ask again, what was the reason that these people received such a poor education, that an entire generation was neglected in such a way? You need not look far at all, and the answer will force itself upon you. The main reason is none other than politics, by virtue of which the ruling class of mankind cares for nothing more than that the subservient be kept in the dark about as much as possible, fearing that if the people were to receive more detailed information about me, and thereby their own destiny, it would mean the end of their power and their temporal earnings. Oh, these fools! They need only look at my David, both a king and a prophet, and as such a great teacher of the people, and they would immediately see that a nation which recognizes God and its destiny is a nation of obedience and goodwill. thousands can be governed with a soft feather more easily than 10 dark dullards, who have no other notion of me than that of a perhaps existent tyrant, or of a being which consumed every last drop of blood of its believer, like a vampire, until it finally blessed him with eternal life, making him kneel and eternally worship on a cloud of light. So, is it not easy to understand that men attempt to free themselves of such a malicious god? And even if they still have a religion in some form, it consists purely of ceremony, and this merely out of divine considerations. The consequence of this has always been the same, namely that the part more inclined towards the world finally abandoned all religions and whatever divine Christian doctrine there might have been. On the other hand, church divisions and sectarianism were brought about, namely by men who, more or less, recognized the folly of the preached divinity, and in a certain way said within their spirits, "Listen, we simply cannot get along with the divinity we are taught about. Therefore, we shall pick up the pure doctrine itself, examine it more closely, and see whether or not there are better sides of the divinity to be found." And during this examination, they indeed found that I am not such a tyrant after all. But on the other hand, they forgot that I am nonetheless God, and they still ended up being lukewarm towards my will. Others put me once again in lofty positions, and in this way philosophized every action their nature found to be a stimulating idea to be just and completely according to my will, with the erroneous notion that whatever passes through their foolish mind is my will. And so, instead of the old folly, a myriad of inanities and varying concepts of the same divine idea arose. So many, in fact, that it is really not worth the effort to list them all for you. The reason for all this was, and still is, none other than, as already mentioned above, partially the moral politics, but mainly the lethargy and the fear of man to earnestly embark on the indicated paths to eternal life. For truly, I say to you, whoever does not embrace my kingdom as I have proclaimed it, will not receive it, even if he were to unite all sects within himself, or stand among all of them. For I alone am the way, the truth, and the life.